What happens when you take two guys from New York who absolutely love to talk and give them a license to rant? You get your hosts, John Pizzi and Mikey Sausage.
Oh boy is right.
Are we back?
Yeah, we're back.
Really?
Does it feel so strange and weird, doesn't it?
It's very strange. Someone's breathing very heavy. I don't know if it's you.
Yeah, I think that's Leland. I hope it's that's the guy from above, the god of above.
Pizzi, what are you wearing? A spacesuit? What is that?
Yeah, this is a sweat jacket. This is a sweat jacket. That's all. What are you wearing? A T-shirt? It's nice to see you dressing up for our second season.
I don't know what you're expecting, but how you been? All right? You been good?
It's all good for me. You know, during these COVID times, I have to tell you, things have been so strange. You know, my wife and I were sitting on the couch, like 6 feet apart for so many months, and I've never been so close.
It's 12 weeks.
How you been?
How you want to get?
No, how you doing?
I'm alive, right? So
yeah.
I made it through COVID. You know,
both of us. We have to do a show just about COVID, though.
Yeah, we'll do that someday. That's like a 2-hour show of all my dreams and memories and not remembering anything for 3 weeks. And I lost 30 pounds, put back on 35. It's just been awesome. You know?
Are you kidding me? I had to let out my couch. That's
the only thing about COVID that was like when I first really couldn't walk for like a month, but the only good part about it was losing the weight, but then you put it right back on. So I don't know.
Yeah, I did too. I lost 20 pounds, gained it right back. However, I got to tell you, I'm happy to have had it at this point. We're healthy and we got through it. And I feel better that we've been through it. I'm not walking around with all the fear that a lot of people had. So it's been good.
Right.
And, you know, this is great. We have to thank our new producer, Leland. Everything looks clean and good. We look good. We look nice and clean. Unfortunately, Amon may not be.
Don't give him too much praise yet. Shit can still go wrong. All right?
Yeah, absolutely
so
right.
when it's all done, then you can, toot his horn, whatever you want to do. But listen, he works for the right price, so we can't complain too much.
Oh, he's not smiling. Hey, so
now, listen,
this is great. This is great because the guest that we have tonight is something that I for years was watching because he has.
Yeah, I know. I love his music and everything. It's J-Lo's husband, ex-husband, right? Mark Anthony.
Yeah. I don't think so.
That's not him. That guy's.
It's a different guy. But,
but
I will tell you that.
This guy's not banging J-Lo, or what didn't bang J-Lo. Or maybe he did. We don't know. He is in Florida.
He is in Florida. That's right.
Yeah, I know. He was. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say Kanye's wife's available right now if you want as well. Apparently, she's got a divorce.
Too much now. Let's bring him in.
Yeah, I know. Too far. Well, anyway, so this is what's great about Mark Anthony. So people that do not know Mark. First of all, I for some reason thought he was in Canada, but apparently he's in Florida. But Mark Anthony is a very unique guy because not only is he a lawyer, but he's also a psychic, which is, by the way, what a great combination this is. So I have to tell you that I'm happy to have him here tonight. So this is going to be a lot of fun. He actually has a website called evidenceofeternity.com. And Mark is just, I guess, I don't know how you even describe a man that can do two things like this together and then in conjunction work with people that need help. In addition,
sounds like he's got a lot of money. He can make it both ways.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he's a psychic lawyer. He's a psychic explorer. He's known as the psychic attorney and psychic adventurer. He's world renowned as the 4th generation science-based evidential psychic medium who communicates with spirits. He is an author of a critically acclaimed Amazon and spiritual bestsellers, Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. And he's here for us today, which is so great. Please welcome psychic medium, Mark Anthony. There he is. Hello, Mark.
Hey, John. Hey, Mikey. Thanks for having me on the show. It's an honor.
No, it's ours.
Look, he got a nice hairdo. He did his hair for us and everything.
He's dressed. He's got the blue and white. And look,
fuck. I'm just very jealous, so don't worry about the hair jokes. My hair grows in like strange, like it grows half over here, so I got to keep it down. So, and
well, this
Pizzi,
is what I would do. If I didn't have as much product as I have in it right now, I'd be like one of those '80s retro hairband, rock and roll looks. But I appreciate you guys having me on the show, and I love New York. I have a lot of relatives in North Jersey and New York City, and before COVID, I'm usually on tour about 20 weeks a year, and we're always in New York City. So, like I said, it's a little bit of home hearing you guys.
So you do a lot. You do a lot of touring pre-COVID, like different types of shows, like different events where a lot of people can come. Is that what you do?
Yeah. Exactly. What I do, even though I'm known as the psychic lawyer, the full focus of what I'm doing now is on my work as a medium. And first off, people think, when I'm a psychic, I'm not a fortune teller. Okay. What I do is I was born with the ability to communicate with spirits. This runs in my family for generations on both my mother's and father's sides of the family. And so a good 20 plus weeks out of the year, I go to various venues throughout the country, and I'm on TV and radio, and I will conduct readings for crowds of people, connecting random audience members with loved ones in spirit. Plus, I'm a speaker at spiritual organizations like the International Association of Near-Death Studies, the Afterlife Research Education Institute, Edgar Cayce Association for Research Enlightenment, Vail Symposium. And then I've also been in New York City. I've spoken at Columbia, and then at Brown, Harvard, Yale, and then other universities, spiritual centers, and actually more progressive churches as well. So I'm pretty busy. I'm on the road quite a bit. Just finished my third book, and I understand from my publisher it's coming out October 5th, 2021.
Wow, that's awesome.
Excellent.
I mean,
Excellent.
Just in that fact, like anybody could write a book. First of all, I'm jealous of. So I don't even know how someone. I mean, you ever think about writing a book piece? I mean, just sitting down and actually getting through it.
I got to first read one. I have to learn about reading books first before I start writing a book. I have to learn how to read. But you're right. But writing a book is a whole nother game. But this is a guy that actually talks to spirits. So when I think about that, I mean, we drink them, but this man's speaking to them. I don't understand, and a lot of people don't understand this. And maybe Mark will explain this to us. What is the difference between a medium versus a psychic? Because there's different categories of all these. I understand a medium speaks to dead people, but which I presume is what you are. Can you clarify what those differences are for the audience?
Sure, that's a good question. The difference between a psychic and a medium, it's all about tuning into vibrational energy to different frequencies. So if I were to do a psychic reading, I'm tuning into the energy of a person, place, or thing to discern maybe past, present, future events about that person or even a particular place. But as a medium, I'm tuning into a different dimension. So it's a different radio station altogether. Let me make it simple. If you want to know about your love life and career, see a psychic. If you want to talk to dead people, see a medium.
No,
Got it.
Pretty simple. So now, as people now, like me and Pizzi sitting here, I've been to mediums. I guess some good experiences, some not so good experiences. So would you say that there are a lot of people in your line of work that are not real, that really don't have a gift?
The problem with the history of mediumship is that it's inundated with fraud and charlatans. And I've observed some people that are passing themselves off as mediums, particularly these so-called physical mediums, where they make people sit in the dark and they make these weird sounds and say that it's ectoplasm coming out of the medium. And of course, you can't see anything except the little green dots that I recognize as night vision goggles, because that's their support staff moving stuff around in the room. And so for me, the test is it's got to be authentic, it's got to be evidence-based, and it's got to be in the light. So if you go to some event where they tell you have to sit in the dark, get up, leave, save your money, it's phony. The way we'll look at it, John and Mikey, Krishna worked in the light, Buddha worked in the light, Jesus worked in the light. Unless you're working in the light, it's not real.
That's
John,
a great point, by the way.
The light, John, or the lights off?
I usually like my everything in the dark. More importantly, though, I'm thinking
that's not necessarily spiritual. You may have to drink some spirit to get in that position, but and the thing is, look. Being an attorney and a medium, I've heard every type. I mean, I hear lawyer jokes, I hear medium jokes, and it seems like a huge conflict, because people think that lawyers are vampiric, blood-sucking, heartless monsters. And as a member of the profession, I do have to say there is an element of that in the profession. And then people think that mediums are running around in a field of daisies, flinging granola, singing kumbaya. And there's certainly mediums who act like that, and that's fine if they want to. But for me, it comes down to helping people. Both professions are about helping people. I mean, let's face it. Do you go to a lawyer when things are wonderful? No, you don't. I mean, I used to practice criminal defense, personal injury. People came to me when they've been arrested or in some type of terrible accident, and my job was to help them get through that ordeal. What do I do as a medium? Largely what I do is facilitate communication between somebody in our world and their loved ones in spirit. In other words, they're grieving the loss of a loved one. And both professions revolve upon evidence. Certainly attorneys need evidence to prove their case. But as a medium, what I have to do is the spirits are transmitting information to me that are verifiable and objective facts that can prove the identity of the spirit. So if I just say, oh, your grandmother's here and she loves you. Well, everybody's grandmother loves them, and chances are everybody's grandmother baked cookies. But if
Pizzi's grandmother.
Yeah, especially Italian grandmothers. I mean, they're always good cooks. My grandma, my mom's family is Italian. Let me tell you, my grandmother, oh my God, my mom, oh my God, they're great cooks. But the thing is, when you start getting intricate details and things that I couldn't possibly know, that's the basis for evidential mediumship.
So let me ask you a question. Hold on, Pizzi, 1 second. Just
now I'm like, my mind's blowing up with questions.
I'll get one, then I'll let you have one. So basically, when someone comes to you, are you always able to do it, or are there times where it's just nothing there?
Yeah, I estimated that I've done at least 15,000 readings in my life. And there's been like four times when the person I was doing the reading for, all they said was no, 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 no. And not that I want to blame the recipient, but in a reading, think of like a triangle. Okay, the other side is at the top. I'm at one end of the triangle, and the person in this world is at the other end. So it takes all three parties to cooperate. And before I begin a session with somebody, I spend about 10 minutes explaining my process. And in my upcoming book, I refer to the no, no, no syndrome. So if I'm describing something and all you say is no, 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 because you don't understand it right away, you're creating an energetic block and spirits start to back off. Because as much as we'd like spirit communication to be texting or instant messaging, where we just dial up the other side and they give us exactly what we want, the way they communicate is by physical sensations. Sometimes I'll hear complete sentences. I will know things that I have no basis to know. I will see visions. So I see, hear, feel, taste, smell, touch, experience it, and I convey this to the person. But it's not always immediately recognizable to somebody. And one of my favorite examples, and I'll make this quick, I was doing a session for these two women. It was here in Florida. Their mother's spirit came through and began to talk about their other sister. These two women were sisters, and their mother had died. The other sister's alive and well. She just wasn't at the reading. She lives in a different part of Florida. And the mother kept giving me the name Michael, and then 10/11, 10/11, 10/11, October 11. And, these ladies are like, come on, Mark, we all know somebody named Michael. I mean, heck, I'm being interviewed by a Michael right now, okay? It's not an unusual name. But they couldn't think of anyone significant connected to them, their mom, or their sister. And nothing in their family had happened in October, 10/11. So I said, hey, look, if you don't get it, don't sweat it. Let's move on to something else. A month later, they contacted me. And one of the sisters called me. She said, Mark, we figured it out. 10 days after we did the reading with you, it was October 11th. And on that day, Hurricane Michael hit our sister's hometown in the panhandle of Florida. And during the stress of the hurricane, she went into labor 3 weeks early and had her baby on October 11th during Hurricane Michael. Boom. See, we were thinking Michael was a person, not a hurricane. Secondly, why would anyone think of October 11th? That wasn't their sister's due date. So that when you look in retrospect and start putting the pieces of the puzzle together, now it makes perfect sense. And I've got hours and hours and hours of stories like that, even ones involving murder investigations. I did a reading when I was on the CBS TV show The Doctors for a family in a cold case murder. Information I gave to them did not make sense right away, but it led to the arrest of the suspect who's now being held and awaiting trial on premeditated first-degree murder charge.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow.
The question is, are you representing him?
Oh, God, no. No, people are always contacting me. I want a psychic lawyer and all this. And look, my work now is I come on shows like this and I go on TV and radio as a legal analyst, but I'm also as an expert in the paranormal, spirit communication, near-death experiences, ancient mysteries, and supernatural phenomenon. So I'm pretty busy doing that, and so I'm not accepting law cases, but I do assist from time to time in cold cases.
What's amazing here, Mike, is that as you said that, I'm thinking to myself, you see, he's not a slummy lawyer, because if he was a really slummy lawyer, he would have been like, I'm going to say you're the person who did it, and then I'm going to go get that person. I'm going to let them pay me to actually get him out of the case. I mean, it's such a perfect thing. It's like he can point the finger because he's the psychic, and he can help him because he's the lawyer. It's win, 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 win. So, clearly you're not a slummy guy, and it's an amazing story.
Well, in my practice, though, see, I was born this way. My ability started surfacing when I was about three and a half. And then when I was 4, I died. I had a near-death experience. And thankfully, my mother and father, when I was talking about spirits, they saw them too, so they got it. But my dad, he was a Navy SEAL and a NASA engineer, so he was a no-nonsense guy. My mom was a commercial illustrator. And in both sides of the family, it runs for generations. My dad, his sister Marjorie, his mother Isabel, and his maternal grandmother Grace were all mediums. My mother, and then my mother's grandmother, which would be my maternal great-grandmother, Giovanna. And in 2016, PBS did a special, The Italian Americans. It was a 2-night special. They did an entire segment on my great-grandmother, Giovanna, and even referenced her psychic abilities. In the Italian, North Jersey, Little Italy community in New York, she was known as the woman who knew things. And she was actually very well respected in the Catholic community. And up until pretty much the day she died, she was in her 90s when she died, nuns and members of the clergy would come and pay her respect. So it's in that culture, in the Italian Catholic culture, it was looked at as the gift of second sight, a gift from God. On my dad's side of the family, they were waspy Pennsylvanian Baptists. In fact, I had a great-great-grandfather who was a Baptist minister. It wasn't discussed openly. That was one of those things that, it was done behind closed doors and it was kept real quiet. But so growing up with psychic and mediumistic parents was a gift. And when I was a teenager, it was a real bummer because I could never get away with anything. They always seemed to know what I was doing.
But now, I've heard like different theories on this. So basically, some people say the church is like against that. You shouldn't be doing that. And then, I know some people say it isn't, because I actually know one woman. She's a medium that I've been to, and she kind of like, she gets a lot of stuff on illnesses, like if you have something wrong with you, or I don't know. must be something that's with her, like, oh, have your father check this out, or your mother. But she goes to church like every day. And she's a very compassionate, loving, spiritual, like Catholic Italian woman. And, you know, I guess, and she works in a different, she writes a lot of stuff down. So you got to like take it with you because, you know, you don't remember everything on spot. Like I'll be home like, oh, that's what that meant, or that's what this meant. And just like she's very accurate. So I have a very open mind to it. A lot of people don't. So I guess some people are skeptics, some people are cynics. But maybe you want to get into like the difference between a skeptic and a cynic.
That's a very good question. And a lot of people say, I'm skeptical, I don't believe that. Well, that's not a skeptic, that's a cynic. A cynic, their mind is closed. Okay? They outright reject things, and with their cynicism, they negate everything, they don't want to know. A skeptic is a person who does not believe or does not necessarily believe, but is open-minded to evidence and to being persuaded. And that's the difference between a skeptic and a cynic. And certainly, I don't expect everybody in the world to be accepting of this and to believe it. And a lot of religious people, they start slinging quotes, particularly from the books of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, how this is evil and so on and so forth. Except in the book of Leviticus, I think it's Leviticus 18. I think I'd have to check the site, but it says that the standard for what in the Bible is called a prophet, but the translation would be now what we call psychic, is truth. So that if what the psychic is bringing forth is true, then it's a gift from God. And if you look at the Bible and pretty much any religion, they're all loaded with people who communicate with spiritual entities. Take in the Old Testament of the Bible, Joseph, who interprets the dreams of Pharaoh. Now, we all know that story about, Pharaoh's having the nightmares of the 7 fat cows coming out of the Nile River to be devoured by the 7 skinny cows, so on and so forth.
Sounds like Friday night.
Yeah. And so Joseph is brought forward, and he interprets it as 7 years of plenty in the land of Egypt, followed by 7 years of famine. Okay, well, that's what's called divination, which a couple chapters later in the Bible is considered an abomination and terrible, but it's okay when you're a prophet. And then let's fast forward over to Jacob's ladder, which very well could be, where he goes into this heavy dream state and sees angels running up and down this ladder or this walkway, which very well could be a description of a near-death experience. We go over into the New Testament. You have the 3 wise men who are foretelling an astrological event, hello, divination, let alone they when they meet Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus, Joseph has a dream where an angel, a spiritual entity, comes to him and says, look, you guys got to get out of here because Herod's going on a rampage. And then, if you go through the entire Bible, it is loaded with people who communicate with spiritual entities. But where we get a bad rap is in the book of Samuel. And that's where in the Old Testament where Saul goes to the witch of Endor. Okay, Saul's in trouble. David's popularity is on the rise. Philistines are on the march. Saul's life's going right down the tubes. And he consults with the witch of Endor, who really should be called the medium of Endor. She brings through the spirit of the prophet Samuel, who says, Saul, your time is at an end. Right after that, he's defeated in battle, son slain. He dies by his own hand. David emerges king of Judea. So what happens, John and Mikey, is that the rabbinical community, the rabbis of ancient Judea, started to say, see what happens? See what happens when you talk to those people? But there's another way of looking at it. In my circles, we look at it as the spirit of the prophet Samuel didn't make those things happen. Neither did the witch of Endor. It's merely foretelling what was preordained, because Jesus was a descendant of the house of David through his mother Mary. So then was it not the will of God for David to become the king of the Jews and eventually be part of the lineage that led to Jesus? So there's different ways of looking at this. And so...
But whatever is meant to be
Yeah,
you can make it.
got to be open-minded about this, and the religious fanatics are always going to be cynical and closed-minded. But I've spoken at many churches and many theological organizations, and I look at it as a gift from God, but I don't take myself too seriously because I'm just the custodian of this, and I try to approach it with reverence.
Let me try to understand something, because I now have like several questions, but this first two are follows. You mentioned that you hear it in different. You get the spirits coming to you in many different ways. You said you could smell it, taste it, hear it. And I hear that many times mediums and those psychics say that they get it only one way. Some people say, I see like a movie flashing in front of me very quickly and I have to grab it. Some people say I can, I hear it or I see a scene or something. So there's all these different, you're saying that you get a multiple amounts of information coming to you as
Right.
opposed to just one, which is probably a much wider brush as a psychic medium than a person that gets it in one little coming through one little space. You're getting a large space. So how does that feel coming? How does that happen? What is the process that you're experiencing clearly?
Well, we have 5 physical senses: sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. And then there's the 6th sense, which immediately we think of the movie. Okay, I see dead people. Well, that's only part of it. The 6th sense has different aspects to it. Clairvoyance, which is seeing images, and there's 2 forms of that, objective and subjective. Then there's clairaudience, which is where you hear a thought in your mind's or a voice in your mind's ear. There's clairsentience, which is feeling physical sensations. Clairscent, which is smelling. Clairgustance, which is tasting. And then clairsavance, which is knowing something. And like you correctly pointed out, John, most psychics maybe have 1 or 2 of those. Apparently, I have all those forms. That's why I've been studied as much as I have been. I've been studied in laboratories in LA and at the University of Arizona. I've also been studied in England. And once again, I'm very humbled by the fact that I get all that. But to make it easy for everyone to understand, okay, how do I see things? Well, we all get the proverbial, there's a person standing in the room, and that's a very real thing. That's called objective clairvoyance, clear seeing. And this is a very common phenomenon that we've been studying in the realm of near-death experiences during what's known as a deathbed vision. When somebody is dying and they say, I'm seeing Aunt Margaret, but then John and Mike, you're there, and all of a sudden, oh my God, I saw her too. What's going on there? It's all about frequency. The person who is in the process of transitioning, the frequency of the energy in their brain is elevating. The frequency of the other dimension of the other side is beginning to align with that person, and people in close proximity get caught up in that frequency. And so you, even if you're not a medium, you're experiencing a mediumistic event. So that is something we've been studying and observing a lot. And this is coming from reports from all over the world. If you want to know how I see spirits, most of the time I see them in my mind's eye. You guys are New Yorkers. I want you to think of the Statue of Liberty. You see it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's how I see them. It's like a vivid memory. Mikey, maybe you see her a little bit more green, and John, maybe you see her a little bit more aqua colored, but we're talking the same thing. And then hearing,
a processing of our mind, we think in pictures. When you say that word, I don't think of it spelling out Statue of Liberty. I think of the actual picture of the Statue of Liberty, because the mind thinks in pictures.
Exactly. And so what I explain in my book, Evidence of Eternity, and the new one that I have coming out this October, is spirits are pure energy, and they're emitting waves of vibration frequency to us. And I always do this, okay, they're on a higher frequency, we're on a lower, and you're getting a frequency alignment. So they're emitting waves of frequency that go into my brain, and that electromagnetic impulse is then taken by my brain and converted into recognizable concepts based on my memories, feelings, and cultural associations. So I was doing a reading the other day for somebody, and I kept seeing Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse. And I go, AC and DC. And the client goes, oh my God, my favorite band of all time is AC/DC. So I'm thinking like, Edison and Westinghouse, she's thinking AC/DC, and we're laughing because it was her father who was communicating this. And so it made sense on a number of levels. And the spirits can be very funny too. I was actually in New York City, and I was doing a session and this older woman, I call her Edna, and her husband came through, and he's given good information, to her, and she's crying and crying, and she goes, I need to know, it's really and I'm like, I don't know what else I can do. She goes, what did I give him for his last birthday? And it flew right out of my mouth, a headache. And she why that son of him? I go, ma'am. And she goes, now I know it's him. And, the crowd was like rolling on the floor, and and I'm trying to be professional. I'm cracking up, and what she reminded me, like in Seinfeld, how George's parents are always like, that's what they were like. They'd been married for almost 2 years.
His personality, that was his personality.
And she said she missed his jokes. He was always teasing her, making fun of her. And, it just made that woman's day. And it was such an honor to be able to do it for her.
See, but what you're saying, but Mike, what he's saying is that the spirit is like the human being. What you're saying is that when I die, if I'm a funny person, I should be a funny person in spirit. If I'm an evil person, I should be an evil person in spirit. It seems like you're not much. You really, as you elevate, does your personality traits go along with you to some extent, or do they start to dissipate as you become to a higher spiritual dimension?
Very good. You do elevate, and I don't believe that if you're evil here, you're evil on the other side. You see,
wow.
Evil tends to be, especially I've done readings where there have been psychopathic killers who killed people, and then that spirit comes through. That's always, a bit intense, but they're not insane on the other side. Okay. Insanity, anger, resentment, physical pain, these are conditions of the material world body. That's what dies with the body. The soul is an immortal, living energy field. And so when a spirit comes through, and I'm really glad that you asked that question, John. That's one of the best questions I've been asked in a long time, is that the spirit retains the memories of the person, and so they will transmit personality traits as identifiers. So for the Urban Edna thing, he knew the only way to convince her was to say something funny, was to tease her. In my book, Never Letting Go, and to this day, I still get choked up when I talk about this. I did a reading for a woman, Vicky Rios Martinez. I just have so much admiration for her. Her 11-year-old boy was kidnapped, raped, and murdered by a serial killer. And he came through, and her mother came through, and then all of a sudden another energy came through, which felt like it was on a different frequency, not quite as in the light, if you will. And it was the killer. And I didn't know that he'd been executed, even though this had happened in Florida. I actually had been out of Florida at the time. And the way death penalty cases go, someone gets sentenced to death, and 10 or 15 years later, eventually they get around to being executed. And it was quite an in-depth conversation where even the spirit of her son said that he's not evil here. And the spirit of the killer explained that he was insane. He explained the disgusting impulses, and I say disgusting, because he was transmitting to me what he would feel when he would look at children. He said, I no longer experience that. He said, but those things dominated my consciousness. It was a sickness and an illness that I'm finally free from. So that certainly touches off a lot of philosophical, a lot of moral, a lot of theological questions. But
I mean, that's the main theological question is, so there is no hell?
It's here on earth.
I believe that.
You guys went through COVID. You guys were in hell. The thing about hell, it's not a permanent state. you can eventually emerge from it. Think of a parent who has lost a child, like that woman. That woman is in hell. There is no hell, but there is reincarnation. So if you think you have it bad now, that's why I always tell people, the point of every religion in the world can be boiled down to 2 words: be nice. Because
so if there's no hell, there's no consequence. So I'm a little confused. Like,
there's a lot of consequences. There's
that's a good point, Mikey. That's a good point.
There's reincarnation. That's what I'm saying. If you think, nobody ever gets away with anything. And I've been doing this long enough. All the spirits, all the near-death experiencers, they all talk about reincarnation, which, if you look at the laws of physics, makes sense. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. We're the children of God. No loving parent in God's pure love is going to condemn a child to an eternity of suffering. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to say, go to your room and I'm going to teach you a lesson. So you come back, and maybe next time you're the victim or you're the parent of that. Also, there is karma. And karma is oftentimes confused with, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's not how that particular law of physics works. Because if it was, every time you did something good, immediately something bad would happen to you. Karma is a ripple effect, okay? And that ripple is going to come back to you, whether in this dimension, the other side dimension, or when you return to this world.
This sounds like a lot of Buddhism mixed into the way you're thinking right now. Because in the Buddhist religion, they believe that if you were bad here, maybe next time you come back as like an ant or like a bug or like a snail or like you're set back, punished in the next life. I mean, I believe that's kind of what they think, if I got it right. So like, if you're a really bad person, I mean, what happened? Like, I killed 50 people and now, okay, I don't know. You have to be insane to kill 50 people. You could just be a bad person. So I may just be greedy and kill people for money, right? So, and then when I die, I'm not like that anymore. I mean, what's my consequence?
You're not like that anymore, but you're aware in this world that you have done that, okay? And there is quite a bit of reflection about that. There's, from what I can tell, there's forms of atonement for that. And then, of course, you're coming back to this world. Now, I don't believe in the transmigration of souls. And in all the spirit contact, that's where you come back as a roach or a cat or whatever. Humans are always humans. Animals are always animals, and you go through a series of incarnations until you're done with this particular dimension. And then, from what I understand, that you get transferred to another one. I'm like, oh, geez, how long does that go on? Apparently, forever. But what I tell people, and what spirits have told me, is stop worrying about what happens over here. Focus on what you're doing there. And the reason for that is that being alive in the material world every day here is a gift. Now, many days don't feel that way. It didn't feel that way when I was holding my dad and he stopped breathing. It did not feel like a gift that day. But every day that we're here, we are able to experience things, physical sensations, that you can't when you're in purely energetic form. So it appears that we come into these physical incarnations to go through these things. Now, I don't have all the answers. Nobody does. I have some insights, because people say, well, then what sense is it? Why did my child have to be raped and murdered? Right. I don't have the answer for that. What we can do, what we have control over, is how we react to that. And a big part of my work is helping people to realize that their loved one did not disintegrate. A spiritual reading where I communicate with someone's loved one isn't going to make everything better, but it gives insight. It helps. It's a therapeutic step on the journey through grief. A lot of people in the wake of grief will turn to acting out. They'll turn to drugs, alcohol, aggression, and where does that lead? Okay? or you can become more compassionate, deeper, more spiritual. So when a horrible thing happens, like the death of a baby, it sets off the concentric circles, that ripple effect of karma, which affects many, many people. And then how we react to that, that's the choice that we do have.
This makes a lot of sense, by the way. I mean, thank you. It's a lot of clarity, what you're saying. It puts a lot of clarity on it. Let me ask you, though, because, first of all, 60 minutes with Mark is clearly not enough time to really delve into more and more of what I want. I mean, I want to sit here and talk to you for 3 hours, and we only have 19 minutes left. I'm already disappointed that I can't get out as many questions as I want to get out right now. I know Sausage is laughing, but this is just two things. One, our producer had a question he was trying to ask on the inside. He was saying, what's the difference between a spirit and a ghost? That's one question. I know I'm going to throw two at you. It's a very good question. And before you answer that question, I have a second question, which is coming from my head. I read a book called, I think, So in Life, So in Death, or Afterlife, After Death, and it was by a woman named Marianne Wachowski. She was MarianneGhostbuster.com at one point. She was from Ohio. She's a medium. She speaks to dead people. After reading her book, it really made a huge impression in me, because I never used to go to people's funerals. I didn't believe in them. I thought they were silly. I don't want to see a dead carcass in a casket. I think it's morbid and ridiculous, and the person's gone. However, after reading her book and having experiences later on, she claimed, and I'd like to verify this with you, being that you're a medium, she claimed that the spirit leaves the body, and as it leaves this body, it's there anywhere. It could be anywhere on the earth at any second. Just the thought of it gets it to any, transposes to any place it wants. And that during the funeral, the actual funeral, that person is there in spirit, seeing everyone, hearing and talking and speaking and interacting, and wishing he could knock you on the head and say, hey, there's $10,000 in my basement inside the furnace or whatever. So that person is there. And then at the end of the funeral, there's a big light that opens up, and then they go through it, and they go from this ethereal type grounded spiritual being to another level of their spiritual journey, if you will. And so I started getting this into my head, and it really kind of resonated in me really well. So I guess my question is, and I'm sorry to go through that long expo, but
no, that's fine. It's interesting. Go ahead.
So I guess the first question is, what's the difference between a spirit and a ghost? And and then when it comes to what this woman believes, do you believe in that same process? Because this woman actually goes to places where they have earthbound spirits and opens up this light and allows them to exit. And I've heard many people doing this, so I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. I take a more physics-based approach coupled with faith. All right, there's 3 schools of thought on what a ghost is, and this will tie into answering your question. The first school of thought is that they are spirits that don't know they're dead and they're somehow trapped here on Earth. That's nonsense. As soon as you die, your spirit transitions to the other side, goes through the tunnel into the light, and they don't need assistance getting there. That's a bunch of primitive, superstitious nonsense. Okay, the second school of thought is that a haunting, a ghost, is actually a residual energy echo. In other words, in an area where something traumatic occurred, like a murder, a suicide, some type of violent or abrupt death, that vibration of that event, it's like an echo that never ends. And it's no more a sentient spirit, an immortal living being. It is no more that than your reflection in a mirror is you. And so that's why a lot of people that go in and do this, we're sending it to the light, what they're actually doing is deflecting that energy echo and deflecting the energy away from a particular location.
But Mark, let me interrupt you there just a moment. Then how is it that, if that's the case, how is it that these supposed spirit, this energy, can cause havoc in this haunted home, make things move, telekinesis, or create havoc in people's lives physically through invisibleness?
Let me get to number 3. I was about to explain that. Number 3 is where a spirit will return to a particular location. Now, what you're referring to with spectral phenomenon, the poltergeist activity, what people have to realize is that there's a lot of non-human spiritual intelligence. You can call them fairies, sprites, leprechauns. I know that sounds goofy, but if you examine the Japanese religion, the Shinto religion, they believe in the kami. And kami, K-A-M-I, kamikaze, that's where that comes from, are spirits that inhabit particular locales. I've been in England and I've encountered what they would call a fairy. I've been in other countries where there are spirits that seem to be more aligned with nature, with earth, and they're not necessarily malevolent. They're just not necessarily concerned with humans. And so a lot of people, when you encounter a spirit, it's an electromagnetic energy field, and when you encounter it, you have an electromagnetic physiological response which sends cold chills down your spine. So what do you think? It's scary, because that's the same physiological response as flight or fight. And so that's why so many of these ghost hunters that run into these places and they feel cold chills, they immediately jump to the conclusion that this is somehow negative. I've been on several paranormal investigations, and they're like, oh, that's scary, scary. And then the spirits are like, why is everybody afraid of me? You know, because I understand that they're not. Now, this whole thing about going around and deflecting them into the light, a lot of mediums believe that, and with all due respect to my colleagues, the second you die, you are pure electromagnetic energy. We all are. That's what we are. And as soon as your brain, think of it like a computer hard drive, as soon as that hard drive crashes, you get uploaded. And that happens at the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles, 282 miles per second. In the time it took me to tell you that, a spirit could have been from me to you in New York to the moon and back. That's how fast they move. They don't need our help. They don't get stuck here. They're pure sentient energy. It's just that some areas retain residual energy echo. Some areas may be more aligned with non-human spiritual intelligence, and some areas that spirits may return to for various reasons. But the idea of someone being stuck here in the, like I said, 15,000 readings that I've done and the investigations, the observations, in my professional opinion, that's nothing more than leftover Victorian era superstitious primitive nonsense.
Interesting. Really interesting. And what about John Galasso's, I see you going, get Mikey. I was going to say, what about the difference between a spirit? I know Mike, I see Mikey has a question. What's the difference between the spirit and a ghost then? And just essentially in a short, like, I guess.
Well, that's what I explained to the three different schools of thought. A ghost, it's like I use the word soul, spirit, and consciousness interchangeably, although there are people that want to split those up. Like I said, a ghost is either a spirit who's trapped here, which is primitive superstitious nonsense. Secondly, it is a residual energy echo, which appears to be what most of them are. And the third is an entity, a spiritual entity that returns to a particular location. Now, I was at the Tower of London, and I was there by myself, and it was a dreary February day. I guess not like today, but it was what you expect in London, 40 degrees and drizzling. Okay, and I'm by myself, and I'm walking around, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm thinking about Anne Boleyn. Okay, and I'm like, I know that Henry VIII had his wife Anne Boleyn beheaded. I wonder where that happened. I wonder if it was around here. And I sat down on this bench, and I'm looking around, and all of a sudden I get this feeling, that tingly sensation. And I look down to my left, and right next to this bench is this glass sign, and it's etched into the sign, "This be the site where Queen Anne Boleyn was beheaded by order of King Henry VIII." I just started cracking up, because it's like, okay, was that Anne Boleyn? And maybe it was, because what was going on there, I was thinking about her. And in my book, Evidence of Eternity, I developed the concept of frequency beacons. If you start thinking about a spirit, usually happens when you're grieving somebody really heavily, you emit an electromagnetic impulse. It's kind of like what a spider picks up along a spider web. They get this vibration. It draws the spirit to you. Okay? Conversely, spirits can do this to you. Let me ask you guys, you ever suddenly turned on a radio and there was that song that just hit your heartstrings? Or did you ever smell something
I get a lot
associated with a loved one that and there's no source for it? Go ahead, Mikey.
Yeah, I get a lot of that stuff. That's why I was going to say, like, so do you believe that everybody has this ability, let's say intuition, and maybe others are just a little more fine-tuned? I mean, did you have to learn to fine-tune what you have to make it better?
Yeah, it's like, if you threw a 7-year-old Michael Phelps into a swimming pool, I'm sure he could probably do a pretty good job. But he needed some coaching. He needed some direction. And you're right, Mikey. Not everybody's a medium, but everybody is capable of having a mediumistic or psychic experience. I mean, parents, how many times does a parent go, oh man, something's going wrong with my kid, and you feel that gut feeling? Do you think that's a coincidence?
Especially the mother. I think the mother more than the father, because I think the baby's from the mother.
Well, sure.
So
there's that energetic link. We're all capable of having these type of experiences. It's just that some people are better at it than others. I mean, some people are better swimmers, some are better electricians, some are better musicians, mathematicians. It would be boring if we were all the same. We'd be like a school of fish. It'd all be the same, like reacting to the same stimuli. We'd look the same, act the same size. We're not. We're relatively sophisticated entities. I'd say very sophisticated. Although sometimes humanity proves that theory otherwise. But January 6th. Anyway.
He's not going towards politics.
But the thing is, the thing is, we're all capable of having an intuitive or psychic or mediumistic experience, even though not everyone is a medium.
I'll tell you why I asked that. So I guess I'm going to admit this in front of everybody now, because I didn't want anybody to think I'm like a weirdo. But a lot of times, like when I meet people, for some reason, I'll see certain colors. It's like a weird, I don't know, it's just there, and then it's gone. Yeah. Like, so, and like, I kind of like judge that person based on the color that I saw. And if I'm not right, like 99% of the time, like if I see a blue or a pink or something dark and like ugly and like, and it comes true, like, see, like when I talk to John, like he's a lot of blues and pinks, and that's like loyalty and compassion, and there's like a lot of things that I feel from that. And then there's people I just feel shitty about, for no lack of a better word. Yeah. So like that's happened many times.
Intuition is another term for psychic ability. See, normally when we talk about intuition, you think of women's intuition, okay? Guys, we prefer to be instinct. That's more Harrison Ford and Denzel, instinct. But the thing is, we're talking about the same thing. And what you're experiencing is actually a pretty highly evolved psychic ability, because the colors that you see, and you're already doing it naturally, you're associating different feelings, associations, personality traits, because those colors are the way you're receiving that information and how you interpret it.
It's more of early on, it's how that person has developed in a relationship or a friendship with me, that now I can go recall what the immediate color was. And now I have that idea of what that color meant based on what that person was afterwards. So when it first happened, I'm like, with blue, yellow, and green or whatever. But now, like, I see it later on, and I say, oh. And then if I see a person that they turn out to be similar, like, I'll know right away. Like, I'll know if you're good, if you're bad, or I just have that in me.
And let me ask you this, Mikey. I bet when you overrule that, you regret it, right?
A lot. I don't do it. I've done it younger, but I do not do it as I aged.
All right, think Yoda. Trust your feelings. All right, you gotta go. And I'm being funny here.
My father was like a big second chance type of guy, and I'm more like of a you're one and done type of guy. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. It just makes us different, I guess.
Well, how about it just puts you on guard, okay? So your intuitive ability is giving you the heads up, and then it's up to that person to prove your intuition otherwise. So these abilities exist for a reason, and they can benefit your life. And, talking about Yoda, George Lucas had a near-death experience when he was 16 years old. Terrible car accident, flatlined, went into the light, encountered deceased loved ones, came out of that, and within a few years had his first draft of Star Wars. Now look at it this way. The Force is the interconnectedness between everybody. There's a light aspect to it and to a dark aspect. And so basically he took his NDE and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar franchise. Go George. But he's also teaching us important spiritual lessons, that you have to trust your feelings. You have to trust these intuitive senses, which you naturally do. And it doesn't make you a weirdo. It makes you aware. So, hey, look, I get called all kinds of names, the haters on social media, the religious fanatics. There's a difference between a person of faith and a religious fanatic. I'm sorry, what?
I said, Pizzi called you a Canadian, so don't feel bad. So you're from Canada.
Listen, aren't we lucky Canada is our neighbor? I mean, it's not like, we're living in imminent, Canada's going to launch an attack on us at any minute, It's like Canada, I love Canadians. They're just like so easygoing. It's like the best neighbors ever.
I see we got a few minutes left. Why don't you tell us a little about the podcast that you have?
Yeah, every Thursday on the Transformation Network. And if you go to my website, evidenceofeternity.com, I invite everyone to sign up for my newsletter, find out when my show, The Psychic and the Doc, airs every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. My co-host is the amazing Dr. Pat Basile. She's the founder of the Transformation Network. She's the star of the hit and award-winning The Dr. Pat Show. So what happens is people call in. I'll do a mini reading. Dr. Pat adds her street smart, intuitive insights. And we launched the show in October 2020, and it's turning into quite the hit. And so that's The Psychic and the Doc on the Transformation Network. And if you go to my website, you can find out about a phone reading with me, which are just as accurate as in-person readings because everything's moving at the speed of light. You can find out about
Zoom readings too, where you can look at each other too? Or no, just phone?
I generally don't do the Zoom readings. Last night I did a gallery event, which there was 40 people there, and it was hosted by East West Bookshop in Seattle, and other venues are asking to do these events, and I'll pick up on spirits and start doing readings. I mean, I'm used to doing it in person, but in the COVID era, it is possible to do it like this. And so, yeah, my website will get you filled in on all of those things.
Mark, I'm wondering if the Seattle shop asking if they're going to get burnt down.
If what?
Can you predict whether or not they're going to get burnt down? The Seattle shop will be burnt down because all the problems that people had there.
They're operating virtually now because of COVID. So the answer to that is, I doubt it.
I hope not. I certainly hope not. Not virtually anyway. But
mom and pop.
When you do this with this many people, when you're doing this with this many people virtually, all in a group, how do you? I only have a minute left, but how do you go when you just pick somebody? I mean, how do you it just comes across and you say, "Is there someone that has there in the audience?"
I start describing the spirit and then see how many people take it, and then the spirit will keep giving me enough facts to where we zero in on who it is. Sometimes they'll name the person, or they'll give me their name and other things. So, but I want to thank you guys for having me on the show, and I'd love to come back when my new book comes out in October and talk about some of the concepts.
It wasn't that bad, right?
No, this is a lot of fun. Mark, you're a pleasure. You're a charismatic guy. You're easy lift. No, no heavy lifting with you. You're a cool guy. I appreciate you coming here. We really do. Thank you.
Thank you, guys, and to To your audience, keep tuning into A License to Rant. This is the place to be.
Thank you, Mark. You're the best. Say well.
I didn't pay him to say that either.
Take care, Mark. Thank you.
Have a great night. Well, Pizzi?
Nothing. It was so much fun. I could go on and talk to this gentleman forever. He's got anyway. You want to get him? Where you get him? Where do we get this guy? Evidenceofeternity.com. And you've been great. Thanks a lot, Mikey. We'll see you the next on the other side, as they say.
Arrivederci.